In the world's most advanced astronaut pool, candidates in suits have their air cut, their escape blocked, and their minds pushed to the edge. This routine was borrowed straight from Navy SEALs, not scientists. NASA once chose only test pilots hardened by war. But when brilliant civilians failed under stress, military survival doctrine was brought in, exposing a hidden flaw in America's space ambitions. Why would NASA transform cosmic exploration with the secrets of special operations? The answer reveals a crisis that changed astronaut training forever. In 1959, NASA's first astronauts were chosen for their ability to survive the unknown. The Mercury 7 all wore the uniforms of military test pilots, each with combat missions logged in the cockpit of high-performance jets. Their resumes read like a checklist of risk: dogfights over Korea, supersonic flight, emergency landings on hostile ground. John Glenn had flown nearly 150 combat missions between World War II and Korea. Alan Shepard and Gus Grissom both served as Navy aviators, trained to keep calm when warning lights flashed and engines failed. These men were not just engineers or scientists, they were professionals shaped by danger, fluent in the language of crisis. The early space program leaned on this pedigree. NASA's leadership believed that only those who had faced death in the skies could handle the unknowns of spaceflight. The capsules were cramped, the technology experimental, and the margin for error almost non-existent. Pilots like Scott Carpenter and Wally Schirra brought an instinct for survival that had been tested at Mach speeds and under enemy fire. Their training emphasized composure under pressure, muscle memory in emergencies, and the discipline to follow checklists when adrenaline threatened to take over. As the missions grew more complex, the demand for technical expertise outpaced the supply of combat pilots. NASA began to look beyond the cockpit, recruiting scientists, physicians, and engineers, candidates with advanced degrees but little exposure to life-and-death decision-making outside the laboratory. The agency soon discovered that technical brilliance did not guarantee operational resilience. In simulated emergencies, some new recruits hesitated or froze, unaccustomed to the body's response when panic set in. The raw nerve that had defined the Mercury era was no longer a given. The shift from pilots to civilians created a new challenge: how to instill the same level of psychological toughness in candidates who had never faced a mid-air engine failure or a forced landing behind enemy lines. The answer would come from outside the traditional boundaries of space science, setting the stage for a transformation in how America prepared its astronauts for the ultimate test. NASA's leadership faced a problem it had not anticipated. As new astronaut classes filled with engineers, scientists, and physicians, a pattern began to surface in the training records. Candidates who excelled in academic and technical tests sometimes faltered when exposed to the raw uncertainty that spaceflight demanded. In simulated emergencies such as failed thrusters, loss of cabin pressure, or sudden alarms, some of the brightest minds hesitated, their bodies betraying them with frozen muscles or racing heartbeats. Trainers saw that technical mastery alone could not prepare a person for the psychological shock of a real crisis. The institution discovered that resilience, the kind that came naturally to combat pilots, was not universal. This realization forced NASA to look beyond its own walls for answers. The question was no longer just about skill, but about survival under conditions that strip away comfort and predictability. Military special operations, particularly the Navy survival, evasion, resistance, and escape programs called SERE, had spent decades refining methods to build mental toughness in the face of chaos. These programs exposed candidates to cold, exhaustion, isolation, and fear, not as a test of bravery, but as a laboratory for studying and expanding the limits of human composure. The lessons were clear. Resilience could be engineered through carefully structured adversity. NASA's adoption of military survival doctrine was not a matter of tradition or symbolism. It was a response to a measurable gap in performance. Training managers began to incorporate elements from SERE and related military protocols, designing scenarios that would push astronaut candidates to the edge of panic and then teach them to recover using checklists and practiced routines. Water survival courses, helicopter underwater egress training known as HUET, and extended isolation exercises became mandatory. The goal was not to break candidates, but to inoculate them, building a psychological immune system against the unique stresses of space. This approach transformed astronaut preparation. Candidates learned that fear and confusion were not signs of weakness, but predictable responses that could be managed and overcome. The institution recognized that operational resilience was not an innate trait, but a skill set that could be taught, measured, and improved. In the years that followed, NASA's training pipeline became a proving ground for techniques borrowed directly from the world of special operations, setting a new standard for what it meant to be ready for space. Inside NASA's Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory, the numbers tell their own story. The pool holds 6.2 million gallons of water, enough to submerge full-scale mock-ups of the International Space Station, trusses, and airlocks. But it is not the sheer size that matters most. It is the time spent inside. For every planned hour of spacewalk, astronaut candidates must complete 7 to 10 hours underwater. This is not a guideline. It is a requirement enforced with the precision of a flight checklist. The logic is simple. The body and mind must become so familiar with the motions, the tools, and the emergencies that even exhaustion cannot shake them. Each training session stretches 6 to 8 hours, matching the length of a real extravehicular activity. There are no shortcuts. Weighted suits, tethered umbilicals, and the drag of water combine to demand constant, deliberate movement. Every action is slowed by resistance, every grip on a handrail tested by fatigue. The environment is carefully controlled. Water temperature is 80 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit, but the work is relentless. Trainees must manage their air supply, regulate body temperature, and follow complex procedures, all while maintaining communication with a topside team, monitoring every breath and movement. The underwater rehearsal is not just about practicing tasks, it is a stress test for endurance and focus. The sessions are long enough for mistakes to creep in, for muscles to tire, for the mind to wander. In these hours, the difference between a routine checklist and a critical error narrows. NASA's data shows that the ratio, 7 to 10 hours of underwater work for every hour planned in orbit, reflects the steep learning curve. The longer the session, the more likely candidates are to encounter the kinds of small, cumulative problems that can escalate in space. A fogged visor, a snagged tether, a tool that will not cooperate. The repetition builds not just skill, but a kind of second nature that does not fade under pressure. These metrics are not arbitrary. They come from decades of operational experience and hard lessons learned. Each hour logged in the Neutral Buoyancy Lab is a rehearsal for the real thing, where time, oxygen, and composure are in limited supply. The underwater training is designed to make sure that, when the moment comes, the astronaut's response is automatic, measured not in panic but in practiced, precise action. Helicopter underwater egress training stands as one of the most physically and mentally demanding drills in the astronaut candidate curriculum. The exercise begins inside a mock helicopter cabin suspended over a deep pool. Candidates strap in, secure their harnesses, and listen for the signal. Suddenly the capsule drops, flips upside down, and plunges beneath the surface. In darkness and confusion, the world inverts. Water rushes in, filling the cabin, and the only path out is through a series of precise rehearsed steps. The protocol is strict. Trainees must brace for impact, locate the exit with eyes closed or vision obscured, unbuckle themselves, and navigate the flooded, inverted structure to reach the surface. Each egress attempt lasts just seconds, but the repetition is relentless. 20 or more cycles in a single session, each one designed to erode the body's instinct to panic and replace it with a methodical, almost automatic response. The physical challenge is real, but the real test is mental. Disorientation, cold, and the pressure of limited air supply combine to trigger the same physiological responses seen in combat diving. Elevated heart rate, rapid breathing, and the creeping urge to abandon procedure for raw instinct. The parallels to Navy SEAL training are not accidental. SEAL candidates endure similar drills to master the art of staying calm underwater, where confusion and fear can be fatal. The stressors are carefully calibrated, never safe, never comfortable, always pushing the threshold of what the mind believes it can endure. For astronauts, the lesson is clear. Survival depends on the ability to override the body's alarm systems and trust in practiced routines. Oxygen deprivation, or hypoxia, becomes both a danger and a teaching tool. Instructors watch for signs of panic, tracking how candidates manage their breath, control their movements, and execute the egress sequence under mounting stress. A full helicopter underwater egress training session can stretch for hours, but no single drill keeps a candidate submerged for more than 30 seconds at a time. The cumulative effect is what matters. Each inversion, each scramble for the exit builds a kind of cognitive conditioning, a confidence that even in chaos, there is time to think, time to act, and time to survive. These skills are not theoretical. In the event of a spacecraft splashdown or a water landing gone wrong, the difference between life and death comes down to muscle memory and mental discipline forged in these underwater trials. William Shepard's journey from the Navy's underwater demolition teams to the International Space Station stands as proof that skills forged in special operations can chart a path to orbit. Shepard graduated from the United States Naval Academy in 1971. He earned his SEAL Trident after BUDS and spent years mastering the art of survival beneath the waves, first with UDT-11, then with SEAL Teams 1 and 2. His experience in scuba gear, navigating darkness and cold, mapped almost perfectly onto the demands of a pressurized spacesuit. When NASA selected him in 1984, Shepard became the first SEAL to join the astronaut corps. By the time he commanded Expedition 1, leading the inaugural crew aboard the International Space Station from 2000 to 2001, his operational mindset shaped every aspect of the mission. Shepard's approach drew directly from his SEAL background, with redundancy checks, methodical procedures, and a steady hand under pressure. He understood that in both combat and space, the difference between routine and emergency is often measured in seconds, and that composure, not just competence, keeps a team alive. Johnny Kim's trajectory is just as remarkable, tracing a line from the chaos of the battlefield to the promise of deep space. After enlisting straight out of high school, Kim completed BUDS with Class 247 and deployed as a combat medic, sniper, and navigator with SEAL Team 3. Over the course of more than 100 combat operations in Iraq, he learned to perform complex technical tasks while managing fear, exhaustion, and the ever-present risk of failure. Kim's next chapter took him to Harvard Medical School, where he earned his Doctor of Medicine degree before being selected for NASA's astronaut program in 2017, one of just 12 picked from over 18,000 applicants. In interviews, Kim credits his SEAL training with teaching him how to function at a high level under extreme stress, to trust procedures when instinct urges improvisation, and to maintain focus when sleep is a distant memory. His story is not about heroics, but about the transfer of practical skills, the discipline to follow checklists, the ability to stay calm in the face of uncertainty, and the confidence that comes from surviving the worst the world can offer. Both Shepard and Kim brought more than technical expertise to NASA. They carried with them a culture of resilience honed in environments where failure is not an option. Their backgrounds illustrate why NASA values special operations experience, not for the mystique, but for the proven ability to deliver under conditions that test every limit of mind and body. The payoff is clear in the way they lead, train, and respond to the unpredictable, setting a standard for what it means to be truly ready for space. Isolation becomes the proving ground for the astronaut team, not just the individual. At NASA's NEMO facility, crews spend up to 3 weeks living and working in the Aquarius underwater habitat, 62 feet beneath the Atlantic. The habitat's cramped quarters and constant background noise mimic the sensory deprivation and confinement of a spacecraft. Communication with the surface is deliberately delayed by 20 to 24 minutes, matching the time it takes for a signal to travel between Earth and Mars. With no immediate help, each decision becomes a test of group judgment and discipline. Every task, from equipment repairs to simulated medical emergencies, must be handled by the team alone. The underwater environment introduces its own challenges: cold, darkness, and the knowledge that the only way out is through a narrow airlock and a long ascent to the surface. NASA's approach to team training borrows heavily from the playbook of military special operations. The agency studies how small units like those in the Navy SEALs maintain cohesion and performance in extreme environments. In NEMO, astronauts are assigned rotating leadership roles and must resolve conflicts, allocate scarce resources, and keep morale steady under pressure. The crew's ability to function as a single unit is scrutinized as closely as their technical skills. A breakdown in communication or trust can jeopardize the mission, just as it would in orbit or on the lunar surface. Survival training extends far beyond the pool. Astronaut candidates travel to the forests of Maine and the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico, facing scenarios designed to simulate off-course landings. In Maine, crews build shelters from branches and tarps, ration emergency supplies, and navigate dense woods with only a compass and a map. In the Gulf, they practice open water survival, drifting in life rafts, signaling for rescue, and managing the psychological strain of waiting, exposed and isolated. These drills are not about endurance for its own sake. They are designed to reveal how individuals respond to fear and uncertainty when cut off from support, and how a group adapts to adversity together. The lessons are clear in both the underwater habitat and the wilderness. Success in space depends on more than technical expertise. It requires a team that can operate with autonomy, make decisions under pressure, and trust each other when the stakes are highest. NASA's training philosophy treats the crew as a single organism, one that must be resilient, adaptive, and self-sufficient, whether beneath the sea, in the forest, or millions of miles from home. Right now, NASA's survival training isn't just about reaching space. It's about returning alive. As Artemis missions push astronauts farther and longer than ever before, psychological resilience becomes as vital as rocket science. The methods borrowed from special operations are not tradition. They are necessity. In the next decade, the line between explorer and operator will decide who makes it home. What would you endure for that chance?